Good afternoon, everyone. I am Shresi Pal. I'm Associate Professor at BMS School of Architecture, Yelahanka, Bangalore. We are a NAC accredited independent architectural college operating under the aegis of the prestigious BMS Educational Trust. Today's event is a part of a series of research orientation seminars aimed to foster research culture amidst the architecture academic fraternity. These events are open to everyone, and we are glad to welcome all the participants who are attending today's webinar from various parts of India. Please continue to be a part of this series where we support each other in navigating the challenges of scientific research. I request our director, Dr. Shaila Bantanu, to welcome our distinguished guest speaker.
Thank you, Shreyasi. And ma'am, a warm welcome to BMS School of Architecture, Yelahanka. And we always wanted to invite all the guests to our campus because it's such a green, wonderful campus. And but again, because we wanted to have it maybe like online or offline, but we wanted to make the people maximum people to attend these kind of sessions because research is something where, especially in architecture, a lot of people do face, and then now there is a bit of change because of accreditation and ranking tools where they required a lot of these kind of the research is more focused, and then the challenge is even always for our program. So that's why we thought let's start these kind of sessions. It's not only is useful for our own faculties, but also it is really we are getting a very good response from different faculties from various different institutions, and because we do it every once in a month based on the resource person availability. But the kind of a response we are getting for every session, I think it's a fourth research dialogue series, and we are inviting all the very reputed resource person who are doing a core research. Why I want to mention here a core research is like in any of the research, methods are very important, and objectives are very important. Once we are clear the objective and then the methods, most of our journey is really it makes our journey very easy. So that's the reason the objective of this kind of a research dialogue series is like the people should understand to know more about in depth about the methods the people are adopted or adopting in their research. It may be in their thesis, PhD thesis, or it may be the through the grant or the research proposal what they are doing it, as we have seen even couple of sessions earlier. And Dr. K. Mohan, he has explained about the quantitative research, the kind of experimental setup which he did for the pedestrian air movement in the high-rise buildings. So similarly, Montumani has explained about his research grant and its methods. So we'll be very happy to know that the lot of our resource persons are explaining about this research journey, and couple of more insights about the research, the entire research. So that's where it's really happening in a very good response we are getting. And I'm really thankful to all the participants that, and again a warm welcome to BMS School of Architecture through online mode. But we'll be happy. We'll see, like based on this kind of a response, maybe in future we may have couple of sessions offline mode, maybe a one-day convention. We will think of it because based on the response, I'm just thinking about down the line. We'll see how we can work out. Or even we have started another one like a knowledge series also on the similar line, which will be happening once in 2 months with a theme, and it is based on different resource person we call it, and again it is an online mode. That is also we are getting really good response. I'm thankful to my faculties where they are leading all such knowledge series. And best part of this is like we are recording these sessions and we are putting it in our YouTube channel. Now we are doing all those editing versions. So whoever has missed, or whoever wants to go through your presentation, or the somebody wants to if they want to refer, they can go through our YouTube channel where these videos will be uploaded. So with this, I'm also eager to know, like the content of Lakshmi madam to see like what kind of a research, and then this is the first time, ma'am, I'm just meeting you. So I'll be very happy to accommodate you for our campus. So with this, over to you, Shreyasi.
Yeah, our distinguished guests and participants, it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for the fourth event of the BMSSA Research Dialogue 2023-24, Dr. Lakshmi Thilagam. Dr. Thilagam brings a wealth of experience marked by remarkable contributions to the field of architecture and academia. She has served as the director of Kalasalingam School of Architecture, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Lakshmi's dedication to nurturing the next generation of architects is evident through her dynamic approach to curriculum development and innovative teaching methodologies. With a diverse academic background, including a doctorate from the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, in urban spatial configuration analysis, and a master's in urban design from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, Dr. Lakshmi's expertise is deeply rooted in both theoretical rigor and practical application. Her doctoral research focused on the comparative analysis of the spatial configuration and urban morphology of historic temple towns in Tamil Nadu underscores her commitment to advancing architectural scholarship through rigorous empirical inquiry. Throughout her career, Dr. Thilagam has been instrumental in organizing workshops, seminars, and faculty development programs aimed at fostering a culture of research and innovation within the architectural community. Her workshops, designed to stimulate creative thinking, instill confidence in students, and have left an indelible mark on countless aspiring architects. As a consultant architect and urban designer, her portfolio includes prestigious projects such as master planning and architectural design for educational campuses, residential complexes, and it reflects a keen understanding of the interplay between architecture, urbanism, and community development. We are privileged to have Dr. Lakshmi here share her expertise on lessons in strategy and design methodology. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to her. Over to you, ma'am. Um, Ma'am, you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
We are not able to hear you. Uh, can you just log in again, ma'am? Log out and log in again. You want to check it?
नाही मी चालले नको तुम्ही ऐकत असाल तुम्हाला तुझ्या समजा दे ना काय सांगू काहीतरी आहे नाही नाही मी चालले त्यांना सांगितलं
can't hear you, ma'am. Or somehow your microphone is, I think, your mic is on, but we can't hear you.
I think somebody has written, she has joined in two devices, I guess. Can you just check it? If Nilima is there, can you uh, just check it?
But both our accounts right now, I see they're unmuted, but somehow.
Okay. Or maybe log in and log out once again. If you can
But
call her.
she has done it once, but
Okay.
it's both all are unmuted. But I don't know somehow. Ma'am, anybody there is already logged in from your this thing? You can directly also present. I'm just saying. Yeah, trying to log in again, I think. All the participants are requested to just hang on. We'll just sort out the technical difficulties and get back to this.
Hello, what happened?
You'll have to wait for a few minutes. Yeah. No, we can't. We can't hear you. No. You have to do it. Uh, can, I'll just call you. Nothing we try. Ma'am, what you do, you present from your laptop. You switch off the microphone as well as the speakers on your laptop, and then you log in from your phone and use the phone to speak. So you log in from two devices, but to avoid the echo, laptop में all audios like both your microphone and your speaker you can switch off. So presentation from laptop and speaking from the phone that can happen simultaneously without echo. But then you switch off everything in the laptop. That can work. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, can you hear me now, Shresi?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can.
My God, finally.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, is there any?
Right.
I don't need this letter.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
There's an echo. I think in one you have to switch off your speaker.
yeah, I have muted my speaker phone now.
Yeah, it's fine.
So now can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh my God, thank God.
Well, these are very common, ma'am. COVID onwards, all online sessions, these technical things will happen. It's
Yeah, but
fine.
this is the first time I'm facing this problem. So
No, no.
I usually use Zoom and Google's, but Teams also I've used. No, never had this problem. Okay, 1 minute. Let me. Okay, is my full screen visible now?
Uh,
No, ma'am.
no, ma'am, we can't see.
Okay, is my screen visible now?
Yes, yes, it is. It's not
Is
full
it in
screen,
ma'am.
but we can see.
Is it in PPT mode or full slide
Yes.
mode?
It is in PPT mode.
Okay, now it's on slide mode.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank God. Okay, so my screen is visible and I'm audible
Yes, ma'am.
clearly. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
so at the outset, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. I apologize. It's the first time I'm going through this. So let's very quickly move on. Please, someone let me know if there is a hitch and you're unable to hear me or there's a problem, right? Okay, so thank you for that lovely introduction, both professors. And as already pointed out, my domain is in urban design, and I've been working on traditional urbanism, very specifically in the domain of temple cities for nearly 2 decades now. So today's presentation, as was based on our discussion that I had, will be in 2 parts. So the first part will be an introduction to research, fundamental aspects, and then I'll very quickly move on to the second part where I'll be talking about my own experience so that you'll be able to get some guidelines, pointers, right? So Now, before I move on to the the details into the depth of research, I think there'll be a lot of young scholars, young researchers here. So there'll be people who are looking at entering the PhD program. So just a brush up for the young scholars here. Before you get into research, before you enroll for a PhD program per se, I would request all of you to get acquainted with what exactly the program requires of you. So the first thing is an understanding of what research is, and going by some of the most important guidelines, some of the international agencies guidelines. Research in its basic form is what we do as searching. So you're basically searching for some answers, you're searching for some kind of queries. Now, what is important is this search has to be very scientific and systematic. And when we're saying scientific, participants, you need to put your mic on mute. I don't think that's a problem. Okay. 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 So your search has to be very scientific and systematic. And the reason why we're talking about scientific and systematic is because at the end of it, you're going to answer certain questions that you put forth in the beginning of your research. And which means it has to be validated. Okay. It has to be proven. And it is only possible to prove something that is scientific enough. So when you look at this search that you're beginning, you can think of it as some kind of an investigation, and something like an inquiry. So the minute we say an investigation and inquiry, it becomes rational. So the question of logical has to be an integral part of your search. And why are we doing all this? All this is because at the end of your search, you're going to come up with certain postulates. You're going to come up with certain hypotheses, which is going to add to the established, domain, knowledge domain. It is going to add on to certain new theories. So we believe that every research scholar is going to come up with a new addition to the existing knowledge domain. So which is why research is looked as a very sacred activity. Okay. It's not just some kind of academic activity. It is a very important academic activity in which your contribution is going to enrich and enhance the knowledge domain to the next level. So, which is why we often look at whether your research is original investigation. And if it is so, how much are you going to contribute? What kind of contribution are you going to make to the existing knowledge set? So this is very important, and this is the crux of any PhD program or any research program. And there are various kinds of discussions on what is research and how should it be done, what are the ethics attached with it, what kind of research policies. This is something that is going on now, with many of the academic institutions and academic agencies that govern the various policies of research. But nevertheless, as long as your intention is clear, okay, you don't have to be worried about that. The ethics will naturally be built in. So when we're talking about what is research, this is one of my favorite, explanations I use in all my presentations. And I also talk about this to all my students. So the one thing that, I talk about research is what Professor Nigel Smith says, that your research has to be specific, which means you must have the exact questions. You must make the exact questions so that you get exact answers. And when we are saying scientific, it has to be measurable. Okay, it is not something that is totally abstract. There has to be a certain amount of measurable aspect, quantitative aspect in it, because only then it is achievable. And since we are all students of science, only then it is also reliable. When we say achievable and reliable, it means that if you conduct the very same research n number of times through the n number of the method, the process, then the result in all of these n number of times should be the same. So that is what is called as scientific research. And since we are talking about a PhD program, okay, in most of the cases, we are all talking about research under a PhD guide and a program. So we are not doing this as a lifelong passion. So the time constraint that each one of us is going to be working on is very important. So if you're time bound, then you need to understand that your research has to be very specific. Now, this is something that is very important, especially for architects, because architects are people with grand ideas. We always come up with grand postulates, things that, encompass everything. As they very, rightly say, an architect is a jack of all trades and master of none. So we talk about everything in one single statement. Now, that is not a very good attitude and aptitude when it comes to research. When it comes to research, you must have a very good level of clarity. So essentially, this is what I like about before you step into research, you need to understand that you need to have a very smart outlook to research. So as long as your questions are specific, your method is measurable, your process is achievable, and your hypothesis is reliable, and if you're able to do the entire process within a time construct, then definitely you're going to have a smart research. So most of the young researchers here, I would advise all of you, before you enroll for a program, just do this little checking up on yourself. Okay. And before I go into the second part, I thought I will need to touch a little upon the types of research, so that you will all know in which particular area each one of you is. Those of you who have begun your research, you should know what kind of domain you're working on. So when we're talking about types of research, okay, there are three basic classifications. We cannot say it as exclusive classifications, but for ease of understanding, just for giving us a little ease of understanding, we have them classified under three basic types. One is called based on the application method, the other one is based on the method of research, and the other one is based on the mode of inquiry. So on these three parameters, we can classify various types of research. So when we are talking in terms of application, okay, which is the first fundamental classification, there are two types of researches which is possible. One is what is called as a pure research, and the other one is what is called as the applied research. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the arts, when you're talking about the science streams, okay, when we're talking about pure science, here most of the idea generation knowledge domain is to do with ideas, phenomena, and abstract thinking. So here we are coming up with research which extends the knowledge base. Okay, so we are coming up with new ideas, theories, and phenomena here. These can be just extension, and they can just end up with adding on to the existing knowledge base. But when we are talking about technological subjects and subjects in which we have applications such as engineering, architecture, design, here our research essentially needs to be applied research. Here you just cannot talk about an idea or just about put forth a theory. You need to demonstrate how that theory works. You need to demonstrate and show the workability of that particular idea. So this is what separates us from the pure science or the pure arts stream. And this is very important because depending on the kind of attitude that you have, depending on the kind of mental construct that you have, you should know which is your strength, which is your forte. Am I very good at abstract thinking and phenomena, or am I good at building simulations and software applications and things like that? If you have this mental clarity on which is your strength before you enter your research program, it will give you a good advantage on the design methodology that you want to take over. Okay, so this is just for you to understand your own self. And based on the method of research, okay, types of research that are possible, there are four basic categories. Okay, the descriptive, the correlative, the experimental, and the case study. I will do the detailed description in a very short time in the next few slides. Before that, we'll just look at the mode of inquiry. So depending on what is the tools of inquiry, the techniques of how we are going to conduct your research, we basically have two patterns. One is called as a qualitative, the other one is called as a quantitative. As the name suggests, one is to do with numerical, quantitative data. The other one is to do with subjective and theoretical data, qualitative. Okay, so these are the two modes of inquiry, the techniques and tools. And based on the methods, we have 4 types. We will just look at the details in a short while. Now, before I move on, I request the participants to write down your queries, write down your questions, and we can take up all the questions at the end because we've already lost time in the beginning. And also during the process of the entire presentation, some of your questions may get answered on their own in the following slides. Okay, so before I move on to in detail discussing about the methods of research, this is a YouTube video. This is a link. If you go to the COA TRC Bhopal, okay, YouTube channel, there you will find this video of mine, which was this was recorded during a faculty development program along with COA TRC Bhopal. This is an extensive FTP. It's nearly a 2-hour video. Some of you may have seen this, but those of you who have not seen, and those of you who are young scholars who are just going to begin your research or have just enrolled, I suggest you to go and look into this, because here I have dealt with the basic, the fundamentals of what you need to sort out before you start your research, which I'm not going to touch in this particular video. Okay, in this particular session, I'm not going to deal with all this. So for those of you who want further clarity and who want to get certain tips and guidelines, you can go into this particular video. This is a 2-hour long video. So go and look at this. This is available on the COA TRC Bhopal channel. Okay. So just to continue with our research methods, let me just, based on what kind of strategies you use, we have these 4 methods, right? So the first one is what is called as the interpretive research. Okay. Interpretive research is something where the research scholar's interpretation is going to be the fundamental research strategy. What it means is the data is already there. Okay. And usually for this kind of research, we rely on archival source. And this kind of research is usually done in the domains of history, archaeology, conservation, these kind of fields. We have this kind of interpretive research. Here, the data is existing, okay, and the researcher is going to interpret the data and find out what could have been the reasons for that particular typology or for that particular, phenomena. So a very good example will be, many of you would have read this particular book by Edmund Bacon. If you have not, and if you're a teaching faculty, if you're an academician, I suggest you read this at the earliest. The Design of Cities. This is a wonderful book written by Edmund Bacon. And this was based on his research, where he was interpreting the existing Greek cities, the Greek towns and the Greek settlements, and many of the other Roman settlements also. There are a lot of historical settlements that he's visited and he's interpreted as to what is the settlement pattern. Why did the settlement pattern come up in this format? How did it relate to their culture and their daily life? Okay, so here is an historical data source, and I'm living in the 19th century, the 20th century, and I am interpreting and giving it a new perspective. So this kind of research is a wonderful kind of research for people who have this abstract thinking, people who are very good at theoretical formulations, okay, and who are intrigued by phenomena. So this is a kind of research that I would advocate for people with theoretical mindset. And there are lots of books which have been based on such kind of research. So this is one very common typology of research we encounter in architecture. The other very common method of research that we see in architecture is what is called as correlational research. In correlational research, what happens is you have data sets, and these data sets are seen as, influencing each other. Okay, so you can call one set of factors or parameters are costs, the other set of parameters and factors as effects. So usually correlational research is based on cause and effect theory. Okay, something is happening triggered because of something. So what is it? And how does this happen? And usually this kind of research is usually done in environmental behavior studies, in post-occupancy studies, where we are looking at human behavior, human activities as a result of certain environmental factors and environmental constructs. Okay. One of the best examples that I can give you for this kind of research is what Oscar Newman came up with as this defensible space. So the Oscar Newman was triggered by why crime is happening in this particular set of environment, in this particular set of spatial aspect. Somebody, okay. So he tried and understand what are the environmental or what are the spatial variables or spatial factors which are triggering this set of human activities, which is called as crime or which is not accepted by society. So these are not good activities. So how does the spatial setting, trigger these kind of activities, or why is the spatial setting conducive for these kind of activities? So he could establish a relationship between the built environment and crime, between the built environment and activities. So this is what is called as correlational research. And you can have this set of factors in various parameters. Okay. So that is another very popular research. And this is another another example of very popular research method called as experimental research. And this is something that is gaining popularity in our PhD programs, because one advantage in experimental research is if you're very clear with your starting point, the time frame is absolutely, defined. So if you know that this is the experiment that I want to set up, and this is the experimental setup that I'm going to use method, you can very easily prove this research within that set time frame and prove your hypothesis and go. So experimental research is something that is being favored in the architectural domain currently. So most of our, energy efficiency, environment related, all these domains have a lot of experimental research can do. And because there are also a lot of softwares that are available, you can easily build on the simulation models, and you can prove the hypothesis very easily. So this is very, very straightforward, direct research. I will say that this is a very direct research method. And those of you who are very good at scientific analysis, those of you who are very good at software analysis, computational data, who love working on codes and parameters, you should look at this kind of experimental research. You should look at these kind of avenues, possibilities. And the other very, very common, this is very common, method of research in our domain. This is called as a case study research. And we are all very conversant with this as designers, right? We have our design education in architecture. We have always used evidence-based, design as a method of designing. So the same thing, evidence-based research. In case study, you have a case, you have an evidence, and you're going to understand why this case is demonstrating this set of, possibilities. So you're going to prove, and you're going to extract a larger phenomena from a particular case. And one of the best examples that I can cite for you is Kevin Lynch, The Image of the City. We all know the history of Kevin Lynch, right? So Kevin Lynch was intrigued by the city of Boston, and he, along with his student team, went about doing a particular, conducting surveys, collecting data. And from the city of Boston and through various, case examples, case samples, he arrived at the theory of the image of the city. So you see, you have a specific case, and from a specific case, you come to a larger phenomena. You arrive at a larger theory. You postulate this hypothesis. So this is one of the very common examples of research. There are many, many case study researchers that are currently many scholars are doing, and have many of the libraries also have them in their archives. Okay, this is another very popular. And this is the another last kind of category. This is the same as the last thing, but here it's a reverse. It's like we have reverse engineering. Here, what we do is we have a larger phenomena, and we apply that phenomena on particular cases. Okay, so we see how this phenomena has worked out in this particular case. I'll give you an example. For example, colonialism. Colonialism is a phenomena. It's an ideology. It's a construct, right? It's a theoretical construct. Now, there are two very popular writers of Indian colonialism or Oriental colonialism. One is Anthony D. King, the other one is Edward Said. I have shown pictures of both of their books for you here. So, if you look at colonialism, the way Anthony D. King explored colonialism that happened in Asia and particularly in India, he said, his viewpoint, his perspective was that colonialism was a good thing to happen in the Orient because it brought in progress, it brought in scientific thinking, it brought in a lot of good things to the, what he termed as backward culture. So that was his perspective. Okay. Now there was another person, Edward W. Said. He looked at the phenomenon of colonialism from the victim's point of view, from the colonized people's point of view. And he had a more apologetic version of colonialism. He said the people who were conquered, their culture and their civilization was far ahead, and it was totally different from what the colonizers introduced. And this has totally, devastated, or it has totally damaged their traditional and their native thinking or their native way of life. So Edward Said was not very convinced that colonialism was a good thing to happen. So can you understand? We are having a common phenomena here, colonialism, but the way Anthony D. King researched on it as a case example, and the way Edward Said researched on it as a case example are two opposite conflicting viewpoints. Now, this is what is called as qualitative research. In this, the way the researcher, the scholar, his perspective and the way he thinks and the way he navigates his entire idea takes precedence here. So it can be either this or it can be either that. There are two ways of establishing your viewpoint. So this is viewpoints and you have to prove it. Another very common example is Amos Rappaport's. How Amos Rappaport understood culture, the phenomena of culture, through various examples of house form. He did a lot of case examples, studied various house forms in various settings, geographical settings, and he understood how culture was a particular parameter or factor in the influence of these house forms. So these are essentially researches that happen in the domain of cultural geography. Cultural geography has this kind of research as a very popular method. Okay. In this case, the reliance, you need to rely a lot on archival data and you need to rely a lot on historical data. So this is what is the other form of another method of research that happens in architecture. So just to give an explanation, just to give a outlook to some of the young researchers, these are the I will say 4 most common or popular methods of research, types of research that can happen in architecture. Now we'll very quickly move on to the mode of inquiry. Now, as I have tried to explain to you in the methods of research, you would have by now able to understand what is the difference between qualitative and quantitative. So if I asked you where you will put Edward Said or Anthony D. King or Amos Rappaport, I'm sure all of you will agree that they were all qualitative researchers, because here the reality, the data is interpreted, is explored by the mindset of the researcher. So it is very, very subjective. And here the researcher interacts with the data. So it is very, very, it's what is called as an inductive process. The interaction between the researcher and the data set is very high. And based on that, the outcome can be very, very different. Okay. Whereas in the other case, where we were talking about cause and effect, where we were talking about building simulation, energy efficiency, environmental research, here it is all very concrete data. They are all numerical data. You have an experimental setup, you record the data. There is no fudging that you can do. You can only record whatever the apparatus is giving you. You just take it and analyze it and you come up with the outcome, right? So this is called as a detective process in which the researcher is not interacting with the data. The researcher is independent of the data and the researcher has got nothing to do with the data. He just takes it and analyzes it and he is able to come up with an outcome. So these are the two larger, paradigms in research, in architectural research, based on the tools and the techniques, the mode of inquiry. So when we look at it in that pattern, with the techniques that qualitative research uses and the techniques that quantitative research uses are very different. You can see here, right? If you look at the qualitative, research box here, the techniques that we use are mostly based on unstructured interviews, semi-structured interviews, semi-structured survey questionnaires, conversations. We rely on interviews and all this. This happens in qualitative data. Okay, so you can see here, historical review more, group discussions are more, case study reduce, and as you keep coming up, the experimental setup is very less. It reduces. But when you look at quantitative data, if you look at the techniques, they are all like structured observations, structured interviews, structured surveys, because these are all absolutely, parameters. They're ranked parameters. There is no changes in this. Okay, it is either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is no yes or maybe, may not be, and all that. It's only yes or no and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here you will see that the kind of techniques that we use, as you keep going up, the experimental setup increases, surveys, these kind of survey techniques all increase. So this is a wonderful chart that shows you the difference between the techniques. Based on the techniques, how qualitative data differs from quantitative data. See, this is important because if you have this clarity of, at the outset, it will be very easy for you to design your design methodology, your research methodology. You'll be able to do it very easily. If you know that I'm going to do quantitative data, then you should know what kind of survey techniques I should apply, right? So this is very, very important. That is why in your PhD program, when you enroll for a PhD program, in your coursework, we are all required to do something called as research methodology or statistics in application and research. So we do this program so that it gives us a clarity towards what kind of techniques, what kind of tools we'll be able to use in our research. So that is why this is very important. Okay. So apparently, no matter how much of initial work you do and how much of brush work you do at the beginning, once you get into research, it becomes very confusing. So the first initial 1 or 2 years will be thoroughly confusing. It will look like you're going in roundabouts. Okay, you're going round and round the bush, as we say it. But that's all right. Okay, that is absolutely all right. In fact, when I started my PhD program in 2004, this was very common. But now it is not so, because now there are lots of programs. In fact, the very program that you're attending is to help you through this process, for you to identify which staircase you should take. So, in fact, I finished my PhD in 2013. And I was one of the earliest, our school was one of the earliest schools to give this faculty development program along with COA TRC in 2016 on research methodology. So we were one of the first people to initiate this. And I did that because after I finished my PhD, I got a lot of scholars, a lot of my friends, colleagues, students who were, constantly talking to me, who were calling me and finding out what is this, what is that, what is it, how can I do this, how can I do that. So that is when I understood that there was a lacuna, there was a space for this discussion. There was a need for a platform where scholars can come and talk, can discuss. So we initiated this as early as 2016, and now COA has initiated a lot of FTDs. So scholars can enroll and you can go ahead. And the good thing is most of these FTPs are recorded and they're available on YouTube. So if you can make a very good use of application of YouTube, you should be able to not go through this confusion, and you should actually start off in a very clear state, right? Okay. So that was my first initial, a glimpse that I wanted to give you regarding how you should step on to your PhD research and where you should start off. What are the first initial considerations that you should have? And I will show you why it is important through my own experience. Okay. When I enrolled for my PhD program, it was in 2004. Okay. I was awarded my PhD degree in 2013. So I guess you all can understand how much of time I have spent. But eventually, I also, because I got married and I had my child and all that, so it's not a bad thing. But nevertheless, you should be able to a good PhD program. You should be able to finish in about 4 to 6 years of time max. So that's the timeline that I will give you in today's situation. So there are two things that will help you if you want to do this within 4 years. Okay, 4 to 5 years. 4 years is absolutely good, very good. But if you ask me, it's achievable. And the two things that will help you get this straight is if you have a good strategy. So you need to start with your strategy. And the second thing is if you have designed a very good design methodology. And the design methodology is the one thing that will get approved in your first DRC. So if you are able to get your design methodology very clearly and not just do it for the sake of the DRC, but very clearly you do it. And if it gets approved in your first DRC, then the next 2 years, you just have to go by it and prove it, finish it. Okay. So I will tell you why both of these are important, the strategy and the design methodology. So I'll very quickly go through my own case and I will show you. So in 2004, when I registered for my PhD at IIT Kharagpur, okay, before this, I was an urban designer. Okay, I am an urban designer. So I did my master's in urban design at SPA Delhi. And SPA Delhi, you know, the kind of school that is. So during my program there, and also before that, during my UG program also, we worked on this project for the Cambridge School where I worked on the city of Kumbakonam. Kumbakonam is a temple city. And for my master's degree also, for my master's thesis project, I chose Kanchipuram, which is another fabulous temple city. If you people have come down to South India, Tamil Nadu specifically, you will see that Tamil Nadu is studded with temple cities in every 50 kilometers distance. So temple cities is the typology that I have grown, with seeing through and through. But what I realized during my professional degrees, by the time I finished my PG, was there was not much of theoretical knowledge or knowledge base on temple cities. There was a lot of writing on temples, per se, the architecture, the design, and the art of temples, but not on temple cities. So that is where I was triggered to choose my PhD in that particular domain. And when I entered, this was what I made in my presentation. My first seminar that I presented, I wanted to do this, look at temple cities and understand through their culture and architectural background. So as an urban designer, the tools that I had, I was taught urban morphology. So we all know how to read cities, how to understand the composition through the basic elements. We know how to understand the composition through the networking process, the nodes, the networks, how they work. So this is something that I knew as an urban designer. And given that it was temple cities, the visual experience, okay, the third dimension could not be overruled. So I understood how to analyze visual system, perception system, visual configuration, all this. Okay. So armed with this, I thought I can very easily understand the urban typology of temple cities, which is what I wanted to start, which is what I wanted to do in my PhD. I wanted to analyze the typology called as temple cities, and I wanted to come up with a set of theoretical postulates. And I understood how we do this in urban design. We use the land use map, we use the city structure map, the townscape, all of this. We develop various plates, structural configuration plates for cities like this, which I have done in my previous projects and all for various cities. So armed with this knowledge base, I thought, yes, I will start off my PhD. So 2004, 2005, I finished my coursework. From 2005 to 2008, I was beating around the bush with these, with these theories. By 2008, finally, when I could go nowhere, I realized that I was not, going in the right track, and I didn't have the correct tools and techniques for my PhD. This is what happened to me in 2008. And my supervisor also spoke to me and he said, see, you are all the time talking about one city alone. I was only talking about Kumbakonam. So he said, with one single city, you're not going to arrive at a generic phenomena. It is very difficult. Some of the people might have done it, but then it's not easy for everybody to do it. It's going to take you a long time. It's going to take you a lot of archival data. So this is not possible. You need to change your strategy. So that is when it hit me and I said, okay, I have to change my way of thinking. And I started looking for what are the other various tools and techniques that are possible. So I started searching for tools for my PhD. And that is when my literature review, came into picture. So all research scholars, the literature review is going to be the one major place that will help you identify your research gap. So then I sat down, I erased everything. I came to a blank state, and then I started understanding urban form and urban morphology from the analytical point of view. How is urban form and urban morphology analyzed in various schools? So I started taking a global perspective and I started seeing what is happening around the world in current time. And I understood that there are these three schools: the pattern language, the space syntax, and fractal geometry. See, the pattern language is very popular, and we were all we introduced this even in our architectural schools. In our architecture program, we talk about this to our students also, right? But fractal geometry and space syntax are not much spoken about. And then I started understanding why. And then I started looking into each of these schools. And after I did a preliminary study, I realized that whatever I was talking about of cities and urban systems, space syntax was the most, convincing tool for me. So then I started looking into space syntax. What does this theory say, and what are the techniques it employs? See, interestingly, space syntax, the first book published by Julian Hansen and Bill Healy was in 1984. Okay, The Logic of Space. It's a beautiful book. If anybody who's dealing with urban systems must definitely take this and read this. In those days, this was not even available anywhere. So I had to go to Kolkata, the British Council Library, to pick up a copy. Okay, but then I started finding out space syntax theory, and in 1996, Space is the Machine was released by Bill Healy. So these are very old theories. But the reason why they couldn't come out into the open in architectural, popular architectural discussions or platform is because they were more used in research field. They were used by researchers, and it was not very popular at that time. So then I started digging, and I realized that space syntax was one of the very important analytical tools that was available if you want to do configuration analysis. And when we talk about urban systems, configuration is the backbone, is a fundamental of urban systems. So I understood that this is the fundamental, and then I started digging into space syntax, and I realized that space syntax had a wide range of research application. And I saw that it was used in urban morphology studies, in street pattern studies, traffic behavior, pedestrian behavior, wayfinding, cognition, environmental criminology. And it is, space syntax has become so popular now. It is used in computer neural networking. It is also used in the medical field in neurological, pathway configurations. So that is the wide range of application of space syntax because it is a networking concept. And networking is a fundamental concept that is used in various domains, right? So that was a beauty. And I realized this. And the minute I realized this, I started reframing my research. So my strategy changed and my research methodology changed. So the minute I started, accepting space syntax as a tool, my tool started changing my attitude of research. So then my research questions changed. So instead of searching for answers, I started putting questions. Now let me reiterate this here to all young scholars. People who search for answers, you're going to get stuck. People who put questions, people who are able to come up with the right questions, you will be able to do your PhD in the very short time. Because the question is what is important in a PhD. And the question is the starting point of your research. So if you have 2 or 3 very crisp and very objective research questions, trust me, your research will go on uncomplicated in a very easy manner. So research questions are the foundation of any good research. So that is very, very important. Start asking questions. Why am I doing this research? What is the fundamental of this research? What are the basics in this domain? And in this part, you will be helped by your literature review. If you do a scientific literature review, you will be able to identify the research gap. Please understand that our PhD is not about reinventing the wheel. No, we are not going to reinvent the wheel. So you're not going to do someone else's research again. You need to either upgrade that research or you need to provide a new tool or a new strategy. So which means you should know what has happened in that particular domain. And that is what we call as identifying the research gap. So you need to do a very good literature review. And in today's age, it is not at all a problem because information is easily accessible. You have various platforms such as Web of Science, the Scopus platform, from where you can access scientific journals and scientific data. There's another YouTube video of mine, how to do publishing and how to access these platforms. So please go and search. You will be able to identify your very good journals and literature data for a very good research literature review. So once my research questions were done, then I understood that the case study and the sample was very important. So my supervisor rightly pointed out, I cannot do an entire research with one single city. He told me that I need to have a sample size. I need to have a sampling data. So it was not just about one city because I was trying to prove a typology. I was trying to prove a type of cities here, which means I needed to have more than one. So I understood that I needed to have more than one. So I went about on a reconnaissance survey very quickly. Okay, you won't believe. 3 days I went about roaming Tamil Nadu without sleep, continuously on buses, just going on foot and identifying which will be the right case studies. And also because I needed to know if there were maps available, urban maps available of these places. And I needed to have very good maps. So I was relying on the 1907 British survey maps, which only some of the cities have. So I went to the municipal corporations, I went to the land survey departments, and only those cities where I had the maps available, I took them. So my data availability influenced my sample size, and my sample size got defined because of my data availability and my case study approach. So that is why you see this, this arrow that you see here. They are simultaneous arrows. Each one influences the other. So this is how my research got reframed finally in 2010. Trust me, after 2010, it just took me 1.5 years to actually do my actual research. 2008, I identified my literature tool, my research tool. 2009, I did my literature review. 2010, I went about getting my sample data because it was cities. I had to do extensive documentation and I had to convert them into digital maps, which itself took me more than a year. And 2011, I presented my analysis. Very simple. 2012, my report was submitted, and by 2012 itself, I got my PhD approved. 2013 convocation, I got it. So all that I'm trying to tell you here is you have to be very clear in understanding before you jump into your research. Have this clarity, and it is possible in today's question, in today's situation. See, in 2004, I had no one with whom I could talk about space syntax. There was not a single person who was working in space syntax. Luckily for me, I had one person, Professor Mr. Abir, so I got in touch with him. But at the same time, you should also understand that most of these groups have wonderful discussion platforms. So I got into their mail, their group mail, and I used to work on that global mail group, and that is how I got most of my space syntax questions clarified. So once I got this clarity, my research questions were very simple, 3 basic research questions, and they got framed very clearly. My sample size got very clearly cut out. So I took 7 cities, because my supervisor also said never have an evil sample size, because then it puts you, if you have a 50-50 data proof, then you get into trouble. So an uneven sample size will always give you a confirmed proof, 200% proof. So validation of a hypothesis becomes very clear. So my sample sizes got refined. I went about once my data were available. Once I got the space syntax software, which I wrote down to the space syntax laboratory, and since I was a student, they gave it to me for free. So I got the key, I downloaded the software. It took me about 3 months to understand how to run the software, but that's all. Once I run the software, I digitized my maps. I could convert my maps into space syntax, axial maps, and convex maps. Convert the maps into quantitative data. So these are all the quantitative data that I converted each of my city structure into these set of data. All you're seeing is numbers, but those numbers actually mean one aspect. It means an urban aspect of a city, right? So terminologies like grid convexity, convex ringiness, what it means, grid axiality. So for each of these 7 cities, what you're seeing here is a chart for 7 cities for all these spatial attributes. See, in my urban design, in my PG, I would have just been talking about these as abstract terms in English, pure English. But now I was able to convert them into quantitative data. And given that I was also working at IIT, I could not present a purely qualitative research. See, that also matters where you do the research, which university. If the university accepts qualitative research, very good. If they don't, then you should know where you're going to enroll. So please have this clarity. If you're doing a qualitative research, look for those kind of universities which accept qualitative research. Or you should understand that based on the type of university, you should know how you will be able to go with your research methodology. So then I was able to do the analytical part very simply, very easily. And since, as I already told you, it was temple cities, the image was a very important aspect, and the user experience was also another important aspect. For the image, I arrived at another analytical tool called as urban image analysis. And for the user experience, I used the questionnaire survey data, survey questionnaires. So I used 3 different tools: space syntax, urban image analysis, and survey questionnaires. From these 3 tools, I arrived at various factors, various parameters. You can see these are isoverse mappings which you have in urban image surveys. Okay, all these tools are now available on the net. You can very easily go and search and get data about it. So through isoverse mapping and through survey questionnaires and through space syntax analysis, I was finally able to prove my hypothesis, which was to establish the relationship between the syntactic variables and the visual variables. And I proved it. And I also arrived at a comparative analysis of the various data sets for each of the 7 cities, and finally between the 7 cities, so that I could arrive at a correlation coefficient to prove that my hypothesis was valid and it was not null, right? So this is it. What I started out doing in my initial, research as abstract thinking got converted into quantitative and qualitative data and resulting in the proving of my hypothesis. So this is what I wanted to show you through my own experience as to, depending on where you enroll and depending on the kind of research that you choose, please be very clear with your research strategy and your research methodology. And once you're clear with that, it'll be very easy to do. My actual research happened only in 3 years. Okay, my report writing just took 6 months. But trying to understand what I wanted to do took me a long time. Anyways, it was good. It was a learning experience. I never regretted it. But then for young scholars who cannot afford that time, you should understand that there is always a smart way of doing it. You can do it. So before I end my presentation today, I'll just introduce space syntax as a tool. It is it's a very easy tool. And the reason why I want to introduce this is so that it is a multidisciplinary tool. You can use this tool, as I already told you, it is based on graph theory. And graph theory is the fundamental for configuration analysis. And configuration is the fundamental backbone of understanding spatial setups. So you can use it in any kind of architectural research. So the beauty of space syntax is it has 2 parts. One is the theory and the other one is the software, which allows you for the analysis. So unlike pattern language, where you only have the theory, but you do not have an analysis software, or like, fractal geometry, where you have the analysis, but the theory is not very, foolproof. Space syntax is one school where you have both of these available, because of which it will be easy for you to use it as a research tool. So I just wanted to introduce this tool today for many of you who are going to start your research, and it is easily available in the Space Syntax Laboratory. And today it is an open access software also, so you can easily get it. Those of you who want to go understand it, it is available as DepthMax. The software is available as DepthMax. You can download the software. It's an open access software. You can go to the Space Syntax research, window and see what kind of researches they're doing. And in today's context, they also conduct what is called as a Space Syntax conference, international conference. So those papers are available open access on the net. So you can go and you can see what kind of researches are happening. And depending on your aptitude and what you are passionate, what you like to work on, you can see what are all the possibilities, right? So once you understand these possibilities, it will cut down your research time marginally by 2 to 3 years. So that is why I wanted to introduce this tool for many of you here. So with that, and all of this is available. There is there's a software available freely. The tutorials are available. They have a wonderful, global platform where you can post questions. They get answered immediately. So go and try it out, for those of you who are interested. So let me finally end my presentation by saying that, in today's time, in the era in which we live, research is not only, important, it has become mandatory. So for those of you who are going to remain in the academic field, there is only one way of upgrading yourself, and that is by validating and proving your own research aptitude. Okay, and it's not very difficult. It also is important because then it gives you a certain platform. It gives you a certain designation in your domain. It gives you a validity. Okay, so that is very important. So with that note, I would like to end my presentation, and I would like to thank BMS School for giving me this opportunity. And I now throw open the session for questions. Feel free, as I keep telling my scholars, no question is is foolish or stupid or ironic. In fact, if you look at some of the greatest discoveries and inventions happen through some of the most fundamental and basic questions, right? So I welcome any kind of question. Thank you all. Tracy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Shaila, ma'am, would you like to say a few words?
Ma'am, it's a really nice presentation. I was a bit when there was some technical glitch at the starting. Like whether it will happen or not. That I was in that kind of thing. But finally the presentation went on really well. As you rightly said, the research is something where if you don't have a clarity, if you don't have an clear objectives, and the research question with you, the journey will be like, it will take a number of years and all that. But even after doing that also, you will not be satisfied, and you don't know what is that you are doing it. So rightly, you pointed out, even during my research also, I came across a lot of these kind of a thing. And I remember even my guide when doing in IT Roorkee as a full-time research scholar. So my guide rightly said, Shaila, now you stop reading it. It's time. Most of the time when we read, I think in one of the slide you showed that steps, like where it create a lot of confusions and all that, and you don't know where are you leading. So she used to tell me, now you need to stop reading, because most of the time when you read lot of literature, it sometimes it misleads you also. So it's always better to make it some boundary. You create some boundary based on your research interest, and then start thinking about it, and analyzing the data is more important than simply following what exactly you get the material. So I think one of my scholar is also attending. I think she has doing on space syntax and all that. I'm sure it will be really helpful for her. And you rightly explained about whatever is our objective of this organizing this research dialogue was to make the people to understand what exactly the kind of a journey of research is. Instead of going for the results, but anyway, we have a results, but how that results came, what is the kind of a effort, and then what kind of a clarity is required is more important in the research. So from my side, I don't have a question, ma'am, but I just wanted to share my experience because couple of
Thank you.
slides, reminded my journey when we go for a blind thing.
So many of similarities, no?
Yes. No, I think everybody goes into this kind of a thing because
Absolutely.
now even when I go for any of RIC meeting, sometimes, I feel so bad, yeah, because 5 years or 6 years of journey,
True.
many of them, they're not clear that what is that they are doing it. So these I'm sure like these kind of a dialogue series definitely helps the people to understand because very few people they go for the full time research scholar, but most of them they are doing a part time research. So in that clarity is more important. Full time anyhow you have a dedicated hours and everything, but when you do the part time research it's more challenging because even you don't get time, the guide will not get time, and then the lot of time is required to go through all these journeys. So I'm sure this is really helpful for our participants, and hope I'm curious to know what are their queries. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a few questions in the chat box. Architect Santosh, would you like to ask the question yourself or I can read it? Are you around?
Yeah, hi. Good evening. I'm so glad I joined the conference. I was really enlightened by a few things, most of the things what ma'am said in the presentation. I just wanted to.
Santosh, can you introduce first you're from which university? So and where exactly you're are you enrolled or something? Bit of it.
Apologies, ma'am. My name is Architect Santosh, and I'm working as the assistant professor in KA School of Architecture in Bangalore. Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes,
Please
yes.
continue.
Yeah.
And I did my master's in advanced architecture from Australia, and I'm back in here in India, just on working on some freelance projects and also being as a professor, faculty here in KA School of Architecture. And I'm actually quite interested in pursuing my PhD career. I'm not sure whether it will be in India or anywhere else in the world. But one of the major things which I felt while doing my thesis in masters, which was on architecture and mental health, or how does an architecture affect the mental health of children suffering with autism and elderly people with Alzheimer's. So that was my domain of interest in my thesis in masters. And one of the major, the drawbacks or the stopping point for me to pursue with the data collection was the ethical aspect of data collections in Australia, especially because they had a lot of restrictions regarding the source and the method of collecting such sensitive data. So just my question was on how when someone would like to look at experimental and quasi-experimental research methodologies, till what level should one look at? I don't want to say ethical source of gathering information, but in a sense, like where does one draw a line onto how does one gather the information?
Well, Santosh, in your kind of experiment, because you're talking about the health setup, health centers,
Yeah.
there are two ways in which you'll be gathering information. One is from the patient, which can be deemed as confidential information, and the other one is from other sources. Either ways, when you collect information from users, any kind of user, the first thing that you will have to check out for is their willingness to participate in any kind of survey. Even like when I was doing my urban survey, doesn't mean that just because there are people on the street, I can go and get anything from them. I need to introduce myself, tell them this is what I'm doing, this is the purpose. Are you willing to, contribute? And once they give that consent, I can do it. But in your case, the consent, because if it is patients involved, then it has to be also, it will have to have certain legal bearings. So you will have to check out for the formats. There are various formats now available. This is what we read under research ethics. Where, there are UGC now has mandated a course called research ethics and publication in all the research courseworks across all universities. So when you do your coursework, you can go through this. But that is not going to be a major constraint, if you ask me. It's just a fulfillment. It's just a requirement that you need to fulfill. Once you get it into that format and that legal aspect, that can be very well taken care of. In fact, my problem will be is, given that you're working on autism and that kind of people, I will be, as a scholar, I'll be wondering how to get the data, rather than.
I mean, that was the.
So you need to invent certain creative, questionnaires, creative methods in which the candidate, the respondent, will not be able to give you direct answers, but you will have to derive. You will have to have an inductive process of getting the data out through certain activities.
Yes.
And this is very common nowadays. There are lots of very creative methods, activities which you conduct to get the data out of them. For example, I will give you a similar example. I know a lot of research that is being done for disabled people, for example, blind people, and how they perceive and how the cognition of environment happens in their case. So here we have setups, we have experimental setups where we simulate a 1:1 prototype of various environmental settings. We introduce the respondent and we track their behavior. We track their response in the environment. Now, this is 100% scientific proof, rather than going and giving a questionnaire and getting, subjective data from them. So this is what I mean as design methodology, how you are going to creatively bring about your design process. So this is all available. You can sit down and design these kinds of methodologies once you go through the literature reviews, how it is done in other places and things like that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Yeah. For the next question, ma'am, architect Sangeeta has requested me only to read it. So in multidisciplinary environment, when people work in teams, architects, economists, social workers, such as in an urban design sector, then which are the research methods which can be included in the curriculum, which can help the students to understand the concepts on a common ground, to understand habitat and communities?
Okay.
Somebody's mic is on.
Okay.
It's in the chat box, ma'am. You can refer to
this is not very difficult nowadays because we have got lots of research and statistical analysis techniques in the field of social sciences. When we say social sciences, a lot of these get encompassed. Economists, geographers, social workers, urban designers, we all get involved. So in fact, in urban design, we use a lot of statistical techniques, which is basically from the School of Social Sciences. So in social sciences, we have a lot of statistical techniques, and we also have a lot of research methodologies, which can come as a common platform in which all kinds of domain experts can interact and can contribute. And those are common tools which everybody can easily, be conversant with. So that's not a problem.
We are open for questions, so you can unmute yourselves and ask the questions.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Sri Lalita from BMS College of Architecture. So I have registered. I'm a research scholar. I've just recently registered for the PhD program, and my title is actually The Efficacy of Expedient Vernacular Structures in Improving the Microclimate, taking Chettinad as an example. So here I'm not a tech savvy, and though I want to do this climatic analysis and all, I have the desire to learn this Rhino and these softwares, but somehow I have the fear. So this space syntax, whatever you have told, right, will it, help, or is it easy that apprehension is always there?
Right. Sheila,
Sheila
Lalita.
Lalita. Yeah.
I can totally understand. I know you can take me as your co-supporter. Don't worry, because I was in the same boat in 2008. The reason why I told you I lost 4 years was because of my abstract thinking. I'm an urban designer. Okay. So I just like you, I had this fear and apprehension towards software, tools, computing, coding, all of it.
Yeah.
But trust me, I had the same problem before I embarked on space syntax. But then I realized that I don't need to be a programmer or a coder just to do space syntax. Space syntax is a software, it is available. I just need to take it and apply it. Very simple. So if I can go through the manual for 10 days, 1 week, I can run the software and do it. Not a problem. Similar is the case with many of the simulation tools. Unless and until you're going for things like MATLAB, MATLAB is used extensively in energy efficiency because you're talking about thermofluid dynamics. But unless until you're going into specific programs like MATLAB, I think the other programs, there are lots of energy efficiency simulation tools. Yeah. See, these tools, you just have to use them as plugins, and they will just collect the data and give you the data. Or they're going to do the primary analysis and give you the outcome. The rest of the thing is going to be done by you. So many of these are plugins which you just need to install, and you should know how to feed and get the data out, which is very simple. Given that we are all professionals, I'm sure we can do this much. So trust me, don't have a fear. Be open-minded. And one thing I will suggest here is, for not only for Sri Lalita, for many of us here, we have this apprehension. The best thing is to talk it out. Find an expert, find someone who works in this domain, just talk it out with them. Let me give you a simple example. The way I bumped into space syntax, the first time I heard it was, in IIT Kharagpur, we used to have this culture where all the research scholars will meet exactly at 10:30 for our tea. That is something which we will not give up, So in one such tea session, I was vexed and I was talking about what is this, what do I do? So one of my, other department scholars told me, hey, there's something like this. Why didn't you try it? So that is the first time I heard of it. And then I went about searching. So, try to go and meet someone who works in this domain, talk it out with them and ask, is this possible? How do I do this? And then you should be able to sort it out. And nowadays, Rhino and Grasshopper, all these are being used by third year BArch students here. Our BArch students use this a lot. In NITs, IITs, many of these people use this for their thesis program in the final year. NIT Trichy has a PG program on, energy efficiency. So if you can contact any of the students there, they will be able to, because they use this in their project works, in their assignments. So just networking is one thing that is very important once you start your PhD program. Lose this apprehension, go and talk, feel free and talk. No harm in talking, no. We don't lose anything.
Yeah.
I think just wanted to add here to her question. Most of the time, most of the researchers, what they do is they decide first tools. They decide first the softwares. And then they do the back calculation. I think that somewhere go wrong. We need to be very clear about what is our method and what is the objective. So once that is there, and then these are the tools which will help us to get the data or to analyze the data. But I think one should not decide on what kind of a tool I should be using for the research at the beginning, unless and until you collect the data and then you say, then you decide upon what kind of a tools which are necessary. Again, that requires an extensive literature review to understand this kind of a data and what kind of a tools are more helpful. I think that will be more beneficial than deciding the tool, I guess, ma'am.
Thank you.
I absolutely second ma'am's opinion. This is very important. See, for all research scholars, your parameters of study, your factors of study, they are more important, because only based on the parameters, which kind of parameter requires which kind of tool to collect data. So first your parameters have to be finalized, and that depends on your research question, what question you're asking. So once you do this, see, it's a two-way process. We cannot say you go linearly like this. You will go and then come back and then go. Okay, so it's okay, not a problem.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Some other participants had raised their hands. You can please unmute yourself and ask your questions. Architect Sanna? Architect Shahrukh? So you have raised your hand before. Anybody else? Yeah, Architect Shahrukh has a question in the chat box. How can we do research on architectural designing? Yeah.
This is too generic a question. There are lots of people who do research on architecture design. For example, Christopher Alexander is your forerunner. His PhD was awarded in the domain of research in design methodology. So you have this classic book of his, I forgot the name, his first book, published on his PhD. In fact, he was the first architect who received a PhD from the Harvard in the domain of architecture. And he actually, what he researched on was, how does the process of design happen in an architect's head? Okay, how does the abstract process of design take place? So I'm sorry, I forgot the title.
It's on the
It's
synthesis
available.
of form.
Yeah, sorry, the synthesis of form. Right. Thank you, Shreyasi. So it's a wonderful book. If you go, he would have dissected the process of design into 4 parameters. And then he says how these 4 parameters interact, in various layers, in various time levels within the head of the architect to arrive at a process called as design. So, and this is as early as 1979 that we are talking about. And ever since, there are so many people who have researched on the process of design as such. So there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of data available, but you need to be a little more specific on which parameter of design you're talking about. There are various parameters. So unless you need to have a specific, this is what, I mentioned as research questions. Your research questions need to have a certain amount of specificity. You remember in Professor Nigel's, that measurement specific, that it has to be specific. If not, you're going to be, reinventing the wheel again.
There's another question, ma'am. Okay, I think you had mentioned one resource person who was working with space syntax software. I think Architect Anita wants you to repeat the name of the resource person. Yes.
I don't, sorry, is the name of the resource person?
Yeah, could you please share resource person working in space syntax software? That is her question. I think they can go to the website as you had shown. It has the entire details.
I showed you those are all actually screenshots of the, the windows of Space Syntax Laboratory. You can just go and you can check out. There are a lot of people who are using Space Syntax currently in India. At least I know 3 of my own scholars who are using Space Syntax. So it's become very common now.
Any other question? We have a lot of comments in the chat box, madam. People have really appreciated the session.
Thank you.
I think if there are no other questions, we can wrap this up. Anything else you want to add, madam, as the concluding remarks?
Well, it's absolutely fine to be blank in the beginning. But as we keep going on, you need to get more confused, and that confusion should lead to a certain level of clarity. And once you get that clarity, you're on full throttle. So the only thing that you need to understand through the whole process is that you should be happy that you're learning something new. So be happy you're learning, and also keep a very open mindset. Please have an open mindset. Sometimes PhD can be very painful. It can be really painful and depressing. So keep your support systems in place, but always be clear of your target. As long as you're clear of your outcome and your target, that should keep you motivated, and it should keep pushing you in the right direction. So that's all. I wish all the candidates today a wonderful PhD research journey. Enjoy your journey, and thank you so much, Shaila ma'am and Shreyasi, for your wonderful opportunity that you're given. It's been a pleasure being on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for joining
Thank
us.